welcome to this video on the 9 traditions, and one extra, from the tabletop role-playing game, Mage the Ascension. In Mage, the traditions are the 9 orders of mages, each representing one of the 9 spheres of magic on the Council of Mystick Traditions. The traditions united under the mounting threat of the Order of Reason, later the Technocracy, and its relentless war on magic. Each tradition represents a unique philosophy, or set of philosophies and practices concerning magic. The composition of the traditions has changed over time, as 2 founding traditions were either cast out or withdrew respectively. Ironically, they were replaced by 2 conventions of the Technocracy, who had once been their enemies. But without further ado, the 9 traditions, and one extra. The Akashic Brotherhood. A sound body is the vessel of a sound mind. A sound mind is the vessel of a sound soul. Such is the philosophy and practice of the Akashic Brotherhood, masters of mind magic and the art of Do, the foundation and pinnacle of all martial arts. The Akashic Brotherhood, or the Akashayana Sangha, claim to be the oldest tradition, tracing their origin to the first human village near the sacred Mount Meru. Here the Akashics learned from the Celestines, Dragon, Tiger, and Phoenix. From there, the Akashic Brotherhood spread throughout Asia, inspiring monastic and martial traditions in the Middle Kingdom. The Brotherhood seeks to achieve harmony with the cosmos, an irony given that they have rarely gone a handful of generations without a war against some enemy. They have battled the Technocracy long before it was known by that name. They fought the predecessors of the Euthanatos in a centuries-long war so terrible that the archmages of both traditions have sealed that period of time from divination. While the Akashics have a number of magical tools, their most famous is Do, the Way, a martial art and meditative tool that hones the body, mind, and soul to superhuman levels. Usage of Do opens the practitioner to the truth of drama, the 10th sphere of unity, the great wheel of birth and rebirth, creation and destruction, ever turning. For the Akashic Brotherhood, Ascension is the return of the mage's avatar to the Great Wheel, the Cosmic All. The Celestial Chorus. The Celestial Chorus differs from other traditions in the sense that they are not merely mages, but also devout worshippers of unity, a sacred existence they call the One. The Celestial Chorus is often mistaken as a religion, but they are much more than that. They encompass dozens of faiths and doctrines, all united in a shared goal of shepherding unawakened humanity along the path of ascension. As their names might suggest, the Celestial Chorus's magic focuses on song, as they believe it was the power of song, first harmonized by the One, that gave rise to the first singers, who aided the One in creating the Tellurian. The choristers are as ancient as any tradition, though they have changed forms and played many roles throughout history. Teachers, healers, warriors, and so on, as the flock must be protected from the wolves who would prey upon them. The most prominent and infamous of the Celestial Chorus have been the singers of the monotheistic faiths. It was from these lines that the Cabal of Pure Thought was born, driven to destroy all who would not pledge their faith to the one true God of the Roman Catholic Church, and one government to act in concert with the true Church. The Cabal later joined the Order of Reason. Some choristers even rendered aid to the Church's Inquisition as a cat's paw against other mages, a deed that still sits poorly with some mages, even in modern days. For their part, the Celestial Chorus has also been one of the most fervent opponents of Technocracy, particularly following their drive to eradicate religion, as well as the Nefandi, who the Celestial Chorus believe are the descendants of the Dark Singers, powerful beings who betrayed the One in the earliest days. Many mortals, and a great many more supernatural entities, fear the end of days, whether they call it the Apocalypse, Gehenna, Ragnarok, or what have you. The Celestial Chorus, on the other hand, welcomes what they call the Reconciliation, the day when the One shall turn her face back towards creation and reunite all. The choristers are not entirely certain as to when or how this will happen, but theories abound, and they believe the reconciliation to be imminent. The Cult of Ecstasy. There are many roads to ascension. The one chosen by the Cult of Ecstasy is often regarded as the path of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. The Cult of Ecstasy has its origins among those mystics who underwent vision quests, dervishes, who sought enlightenment by altering their perceptions through consuming plants, potions, entering music and dancing-induced trances, and even by physical mortification. In doing so, the early ecstatics discovered that they could slip the bonds of time, casting their minds backwards and forwards. It was one such master ecstatic who brought together the cabal of mages who founded the traditions. It is this foresight that makes the Cult of Ecstasy so formidable, even as they appear to be stupefied by narcotics and noise. Then again, if you saw the past, present, and future as the same thing, you might also look a bit out of it. Many ecstatics even play up the role, appearing as stoned hippies, devil-may-care rockers, drugged-out gurus, and are often met with dismissal. Wiser mages know what the Cult of Ecstasy are trying to accomplish, even if they don't agree with the methods, shattering the barriers between self and avatar to reach a higher state of being. However, the cult does have its own taboos. Violating others is as detrimental to one's own spirit as it is to their victims, and the ecstatics have been known to crack down, harshly, on their own numbers who abuse their power against the sleepers. However, it is a very thin line the ecstatics walk between ascension and addiction, and some have fallen off the sides into a pit that they have never crawled out of again. The Dreamspeakers. The Dreamspeakers are only a tradition in a very loose sense. Born of hundreds of shamanic practices that predate the written word, the mages of the Dreamspeakers battle not only against the technocracy, but to keep their own magical styles alive. Indeed, many of the mages who would be titled the Dreamspeakers were not invited to the grand convocation that formed the traditions in the first place. Yet they were informed by the spirits of nature of the movements of the mages. Some even received visions that their presence at the convocation would be necessary to preserve their ways. However, the other mages weren't quite sure of what to do with them. Most didn't know their languages and didn't particularly care to learn them. The more organized groups appointed the shamans a few spokesmen, and then left them to their own devices. By the time those who speak with dreams hammered out their many tribal, linguistic, racial, and practical differences, the other traditions dubbed them the Dreamspeakers, whether they liked it or not. The Dreamspeakers have been put upon with the so-called March of Progress, and embittered by their ostensible allies in the traditions who seem disinterested in their plight. Yet the Dreamspeakers have not given up their fight to preserve the land and its spirits from the merciless sword called industrialization. They are loosely organized, have few internal politics, and fewer leaders. This makes the Dreamspeakers difficult both to destroy and to negotiate with, as no Dreamspeakers are obliged to honor the bargains of others. Some Dreamspeakers are peaceful visionaries, others are bloody-handed war shamans who make magic from the hearts of their fallen enemies. Regardless of their particular way, all Dreamspeakers bear a deep connection to the natural world, and the dream of a day when their magics and peoples will return to strength. The Euthanatos. It is the fate of the living to eventually die. Whether it is with pain, joy, regret, or contentment, all must rejoin the great wheel at his or her appointed hour. This is the philosophy of the Euthanatos, one which has been the source of much strife between them and the other traditions. Contrary to the calumnies hurled against them, the Euthanatos do not worship death, nor do they revel in murder, torture, necromancy, vampirism, infernalism, or other dark practices. It's just that certain of their members happen to fall to them from time to time. The Euthanatos are a syncretic tradition of death mages from India, Greece, Africa, and Arabia, who battled the Akashic Brotherhood over the proper interpretation of reincarnation. The Akashics sought to avoid reincarnation until enlightenment was achieved, while the Proto-Euthanatos, the Handura, the Bawana, and the Dacoits believed that by terminating life before the accumulation of too much karma, the good death, could hasten a soul's progress towards ascension. There was also the practical idea that it was kinder to kill those dying of plague or starvation or crippling wounds quickly than to allow them to linger on in suffering. Few Euthanatos are happy killers. Delivering the good death is a task, one that they excel at, but ultimately it is a burden they must bear so that others are released from their karma. And yet, the suffering in the world has only increased despite the Euthanatos' labor, A handful of the tradition have suggested that perhaps a greater culling is necessary, a controlled burn to make way for newer growth. Ironically, many Euthanatos are doctors, medics, mathematicians, horticulturalists, and gamblers. The act of taking life may be karmically balanced by saving life and even cultivating it. Additionally, their intense study of the Great Wheel has given the Euthanatos unique insights into probability and fate, increasing the odds that they might save a life or take it more effectively. The Order of Hermes. No other tradition can claim to have trained as many archmages, produced as much scholarship, or constructed as many chantries as the Order of Hermes. They are the architects and the ruin of the high mythic age. They are the archetypal wizards, scholarly, paranoid, inquisitive, and proud. Through study and rote, the Order sought to codify the art, as they called, to a quantifiable and predictable set of formula, language, and numbers, a skill like any other, that could be mastered by the dedicated. Hermetic magic traces its lineages to the scribe wizards of Egypt, the Kabbalists of Israel, and the mystery cults of Rome. Unlike other mages who concealed themselves in isolation or behind mundane associations, the Order of Hermes, for a time, practiced their power in the open, told the sleepers that magic was indeed real, and that the wise were wary of those who wielded it. Yet this penultimate hubris gave birth to the Hermetics' greatest foe, born from their own ranks, the Order of Reason. The Order of Hermes despises the technocracy, and are the foremost proponents of its destruction. Yet the technocrats' grip on reality has only tightened with the passage of time, and even the Order of Hermes has been forced to conceal its high rituals behind secrecy and coincidence, even as they try to plant the seeds of magic in the minds of sleepers once more through other fronts. The Order of Hermes produces disciplined, if arrogant mages. Only those who hunger for knowledge and power can succeed within the Order. The proof of their dedication is in the amassed archives of magical knowledge in the Order's possession. Yet the Order is mired in politics and backstabbing, as any mage of promise or rank is hopelessly chained by the favors they owed to reach that position. Additionally, the other traditions, perhaps rightly, fear the Order of Hermes. After all, the Hermetics once proposed to subsume all other mages into the Order. That fear is bolstered by the fact that if the Hermetics were of one mind on the matter, they might very well be able to do it. The Sons of Ether. Optimism, adventure, and the promise of a better tomorrow through science, which must always be capitalized, as is the driving force of the tradition known as the Sons of Ether, which holds ties to both the traditions and the technocracy. The Etherite philosophy originated with a Greek philosopher named Euthanatos, who wrote a treatise known as the Book of Ether, which posited the existence of a single universal essence, the ether, and how the ether was differentiated throughout creation. Euthanatos also theorized that philosophers who could observe and manipulate the ether through understanding and will could in turn affect the world. The book was lost for centuries until it was rediscovered, leading to the creation of the Natural Philosophers Guild, which sought to combine will working and scientific principles. The guild eventually joined the Order of Reason as the Electrodyne Engineers, but the marriage was not a happy one. Eventually, the technocrats tried to bring the engineers to heel by discrediting the theory of ether. Instead, they sparked a revolt. The Electrodyne Engineers, through back channels with the Order of Hermes, abandoned the technocracy in favor of the traditions. The Sons of Ether are technomancers, mad scientists, and explorers from a time when science had more to do with inspiration and aesthetics than with rote and repetition. Scientists, first and foremost, whose work is dedicated to improving the conditions of all mankind. But they are not bound by mere scientific laws. They build their ether ships and set sail into space, delve into the hollow earth to discover lost civilizations, and fight the technocracy with death rays and jetpacks. But unlike the technocrats, the Etherites do not wish to force their paradigm upon humanity. Instead, they wish to inspire sleepers to manipulate the ether themselves, to freely partake of the limitless fountain that will eventually fuel mass ascension. The Verbena. Life is growth, and pain, and blood. The mages of the Verbena embody the idea of life as danger and joy. The followers of the Wick, as the Verbena often call themselves, seek to embody light and darkness in the same person, to grasp all aspects of life. Their avatars tend to be primordial. The mediums of magic are simple but strong, blades, branches, and blood. Yet the passage of time has not been kind to the Verbena. Their way is without pity and fearsome to the uninitiated, making them easy targets for the witch hunters of the Inquisition. The slaughter upon the followers of the Wick was great, until Nightshade, a mage shown the vision of unity by the seer, brought the disparate crafts together, binding them into a single tradition. The Verbena, united by shared pain and suffering and joy. Their hardships made them as proud as the Hermetics. Verbena practice centers around the great tree, balanced by male and female aspects, taking nourishment from its native soil and spreading its branches far and wide. The most powerful Verbena covens are built around trees grown from branches of the World Tree, fed by blood and magic. The darker the tree, the more powerful the coven. Additionally, Verbena rituals revolve around archaic practices, seasonal changes, and lunar cycles. The Virtual Adepts. The second technocratic tradition to rebel against the Union in favor of the traditions, the Virtual Adepts, previously known as the Difference Engineers, are enlightened mathematicians, anarchic reality hackers, and cynical metaphysicians. The tools of the Adepts are those transmitting information, such as telegraphs, phones, and computers. As the Difference Engineers, the Adepts defy the orders of their superiors, often. When an archmage of the convention created a pocket realm, the net realm, the seed of what would become the digital web, the technocracy conspired to take it from them. Instead, the Difference Engineers fled. The Virtual Adepts, as they style themselves, are optimistic cynics. The only authority they recognize is that of merit, with a bit of style and attitude to make it all play. They regard the digital web as the new reality, and the Earth, or the mudball as they call it, a lost cause. So they build and fight in the web, encouraging individualism, self-sufficiency, and risk-taking. With the advent of the internet, the Virtual Adepts had a medium to spur sleepers into awakening. The Hollow Ones. The Hollow Ones are not a tradition, but a rebellion against the traditions, the technocracy, and even modernity. The Hollow Ones originated with the Lost Generation, those who lived during the First World War and came of age in the 1920s, a generation that tasted post-war prosperity but was uncertain of what to do with it, so they created a counterculture instead, dabbling in the occult, romanticism, psychology, metaphysics, and morbidity. The stereotypical Hollow Ones in the modern days take on variations of the mall goth aesthetic. They see the world as a dying flower or a rotting carcass, a beautiful tragedy, much like themselves. The Hollow Ones with the more contemporary goth aesthetic tend to draw and be drawn to outcasts and the melancholy. They form cliques with other Hollow Ones, along with an assortment of hangers-on, which are as tightly knit as they are dysfunctional. Because the Hollow Ones stand apart from both traditions and technocracy, their training tends to be very ad hoc, intuitive, or just outright slapdash from books and guessing. A little witchcraft here, a little spiritualism there, maybe some voodoo for dummies, with a little Crowley tossed in for aesthetics. But the tools matter less than the wielder, and the power is less in the ritual than in the person. Joining the Hollow Ones is as easy or as difficult as finding and being admitted to one of their cliques. However, the price is usually some display of magical talent, such as lighting a black candle without touching it, or an act of kinship with the clique. After that comes the ritual, which binds the Hollow One to their new clique. Hollow Ones tend to be a bit more public than other mages, throwing parties every Halloween complete with live music and show rituals that are more intended for appearances than effect. And of course, the Hollow Ones love it when vampires show up to their parties. And those were the traditions of Mage the Ascension. As editions of the game went on, the traditions got some much needed development, and a few unneeded kicks in the balls, such as the technocracy winning the Ascension War pretty much by default in shenanigans. My favorite traditions are the Akashic Brotherhood because Kung Fu, and the Order of Hermes because they are actual wizards. But each of the traditions is distinct enough and unique enough that in the hands of skilled players, mages can pull the same effect in a variety of ways. For example, the classic fireball. A hermetic mage unconcerned with paradox pops out the old magic wand and lets fly. A Dreamspeaker might summon a spirit of fire to give their enemy a little love tap. An Aetherite pulls out his trusty directed oxygen igniter, aims, and pulls. A Verbena might carve out the rune of fire into their palm, do the chant, and let go. Granted, these are all arguably vulgar ways of doing magic, but the point is, every tradition has its way of doing things, and they all work. Most of the time. Anyway, that's all I have for now. Until next time.